And we're live. Welcome to the Constitutional Roundtable, episode 21. I am your host, Andrew, as usual. With me is Brady and the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Constitution himself, Douglas V. Gibbs. How y'all doing today?
Well,
I just stuttered. That was weird.
Apparently I'm not a man, myth, or legend, but I'm doing good despite that minor setback.
Well, you can identify though as one.
That's true. For instance, I identify as someone who is not fat. Oh wait, you can't identify of things you actually are, right?
I have no idea how that game works. I don't even want to know about how the identify thing is. I do identify as a hamster every once in a while there, so I guess I do play the game.
Well, I would like to identify as rich, but unfortunately they don't. Maybe I could sue them. They're supposed to give me money, right? Because I identify as rich, or reparations or something. Yeah. Ooh, I'm not gonna go down that road. I was about to go down the reparations road, but I didn't. Hey, why'd your episode get canceled? Well, it wasn't Doug this time. Violence.
I had a couple of violence. I had a couple of fun little conversations on social media this week regarding people who were bringing up reparations. Just basically told them to zip it with their black, white, right, left nonsense and start paying. Put your focus on the people who are really the problem, because the system's screwing all of us.
Hey, I just want to say, just for clarification, that the United States of America is never wrong. Joe Biden is the best president ever. Who's the most popular president? Okay, and Kamala Harris is Asian and black and all that she wants to be because she is brave and create, or whatever the other words are that you're supposed to say.
Is it April Fool's Day? Is it April Fool's Day already?
No. I am being 100% honest. Yes. If you know what I mean. Well, you said the word black, so I had to come up with something for the algorithm not to catch that. I had to cover it.
How'd your speech go today, Doug?
It went fantastic. It was one that you've never heard before. I am going to the video was taken by Sydney, but the lighting was awful, so you really can't see me. The audio is okay. So what we'll probably do is I'll play with it and improve the audio, and then put up images or something. Someday when I get to that speech, of course, I've got about a line of about 6 or 7 other ones I got to get to first. But there were elements of things you've heard me say, but it was something totally new, and there was some totally new stuff in it because the person who was supposed to speak instead of me originally scheduled is a business owner who's going to talk about how a certain lockdown period influenced his business. I decided to piggyback on that idea and talk about that time period in which this country went through, and talk about the constitutional angles on that and the disallowances of government to operate in the way that they did. Article 1, Section 1 came in, the 14th Amendment came in, the 5th Amendment came into it, along with a bunch of other stuff. I will post the transcript, or at least my script I wrote for the speech. Of course, I added a few things, but I'll post that as an article, hopefully in the next few days. Went really well.
Oh, go ahead.
And I sold lots of my new book, which Andrew hasn't bought yet, and so.
Well, whenever I
get his address and send him one.
Whenever I identify as rich again and I actually have money because everything's going into the move, we will.
It's a $20 book, man.
What?
It's a $20 book.
Hey,
literally, for those of you watching, it is Repeal Democracy. Is the name of it.
And if you're budget conscious, I believe it's $3 to buy the Kindle version.
Yeah, I've had a couple of people apologize. Hey, man, I use Kindle. I know you're not going to make as much of that. No. If that's what you do, do it.
Well, I'm actually going to switch to Kindle just so it's so much easier to cut and paste. All the stuff I'm reading is documentary and stuff like that, stuff I want to keep notes on. And it's a lot easier just to cut and paste from a Kindle than it is to type verbatim from a from a book. So
All
if
right,
my
I got you.
if
And
my
also,
eye-
all of my titles would be a lot less expensive for you to get
yeah,
since there's 9 of them.
that's all right. I don't
Of
mind.
course, for Field Democracy, you didn't have to pay anything for it because you showed up to my event last year.
Well, yeah. So I just had to pay $80 in gas. So those,
So if y'all
Okay,
wonder
so-
what I'm doing, I'm staying in my dad's old room because my dad's old like den room, whatever, and I just found a stash. Sorry, I'm staying with my mom right now while I'm getting my ducks in a row. Forgive me.
yeah. When's the family join you next week?
3 weeks.
3 whole weeks. Oh wow.
Yeah, no.
Wow.
It's better than months. So I mean, I have so much I have to coordinate and get all set up. So it's
I'm still curious what the stash is you found.
well, one of them here. I'll show you the bottom of it.
Because see, if nobody knew you, that stash could be anything.
I think I could show that on a live. Either that or I just got us canceled.
I have no idea what I have no idea what I'm looking at.
I do.
Or another Gerber? Really? Wow. I'm gonna ask Mom if I can have that. Sorry. Anyway. Dad has been dead since 2017. I don't even think she even knows that that's there. We still can't find some of his guns. He was kind of a prepper, but then not.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I am. I kind of am, kind of not. If all heck breaks loose, I'm good for a while, but not as good as some friends of mine. One in particular who is in North Carolina, another one who I met with today who lives in my town.
Oh, and I was also wrong. It's not a Gerber, it's a buck.
Well, I have been increasing my preparations on a monthly basis, and I got about 2 more big purchases, and then I'll feel like I can probably go 6 months. So I'm feeling pretty close to prepared. What I do want to get is a dirt bike, because when the zombie apocalypse hits, the roads are going to be closed, and that dirt bike is going to be worth $1 million to do the off-roading and be able to navigate and get places. So that's got to be on the wish list. Then I just have to learn how to ride one.
Oh, here's something. I'm going to show you all this real quick, and then we'll get back on topic. But I think Doug will know what these are. But, all right.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You know what that is?
Yeah. It's cribbage board.
Did you know
Right.
what that was, Warhamster?
Yeah, I've played cribbage before.
And then here's this. A Netar. It's a camera.
Yeah.
Well, that was our
Here's
segment
the
of
reason I
the
don't
road
have-
show.
Hence the reason I don't have very many people ask me, well, can we see pictures of you when you're younger? There's like 5 or 6. Because we didn't walk around with our cameras in our pockets and then answer them when they rang. Because, it was a Polaroid or whatever, and, that could get expensive. So, I mean, there's literally like maybe half a dozen pictures of me before I was 18, 2 or 3 when I was in the Navy, and one when I got, like 2 when I got married. And then I think we did one of a family right after when our daughter was an infant. I mean, until the age of smartphones, I mean, I have almost no pictures of me.
I was given a pretty decent camera for like a high school graduation present for back then. So I got some good college pictures and probably through mid-20s. And then the camera, you had to remember to pick up your film and drop it off, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Then I got about a 10-year gap before the smartphones hit. And I occasionally had the disposable cameras were a pretty cool thing for a bit.
I think I'm going to change the name of this first segment to the Antique Roadshow because I was showing all this cool stuff. Now we're talking about classics.
Well, there's an investment theory in the late 60s talked about the Nifty 50. These are the 50 companies that are going to take over the world and will be around forever. And Kodak was one of them. And obviously Kodak went the way of the dinosaur. And but if you look at the old Nifty 50, it's a pretty funny who's who list of how these guys were terrible, projecting what the next technology would be. And Kodak could have
Nobody
been
saw the info technology coming, I don't think, except for a handful.
Yeah, Kodak could have been way in front on the digital film stuff. They had the technology, they just weren't smart enough to execute, and they got beat to the punch. That was a really bad execution because they were ahead of everyone, and they had the deep pockets. But it's a classic business school thing they teach is the demise of Kodak.
So, Doug, when you were a kid, was it the one where was it the one where like you pull the thing out and then like you let it develop?
We leaned everybody against the cave wall, threw a bunch of smoke at them, and then they walked away from the wall, and they were,
That's good.
No, seriously though, whenever you're a kid, they not have the Polaroid. You know, the one where you
Yeah,
take
we
a
pulled a
picture?
Polaroid out. Yeah, no, that's matter of fact. I have a picture of me when I was 21 in the Navy, and that's exactly what it was as a Polaroid.
I don't remember those.
I had a Polaroid camera from like probably age 20 to till I was about 25, 28, something like that. That I took pictures with. You
Good
sit there
stuff.
going like this, to
Yeah.
get it to develop, with air and stuff.
Yeah, when I was a kid, mine was the updated Polaroid. It was the one from the 90s where you take the picture and you just pull it out. It's
All of you that are enemies of me and want to get a really good image of me acting really silly and then say it was something that's not actually what I was saying, go ahead. You got your chance again. All right. That was your chance. It's like
all
I
right.
tell
So
people, I describe sometimes to groups the salute that Americans first did to the American flag. And today we would call it the Nazi salute, but I will never actually show what that salute looked like. The last thing I need is for somebody to snap a picture of me doing that.
oh, you mean I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we don't need that type of imagery because they
then
will misuse it, out of context. That's what they do. Speaking of they, who among they are we talking about today?
Well, I think the fun day this week, or the one not so much fun, is what's going on with Project Veritas. That is some ugly stuff.
I actually have a friend who worked with James O'Keefe. Used to work with him, and we're still in touch. And he's got some interesting stories of some of the undercover stuff he did. But so tell me, because I have not been keeping up the story. Let us know.
Well, you have more than one friend who worked with Project Veritas, because there's somebody else that we both know that did a little bit of work with him last year.
Last year, okay.
But I'm not privy to.
Okay, well, the person I know was many years, but it's been the last couple of years that he hasn't. He's been getting more involved with working with certain GOP groups. But
well, so a few weeks ago, he had the real big viral video with a Pfizer bust or sting, I should say. And where you had the guy who supposedly worked at Pfizer was giving up all kinds of dirt, and it went viral. I've talked about this a little bit. George Webb, who's also an investigative journalist, thought James O'Keefe was going down the wrong path. Last Wednesday, the Project Veritas appearance in front of Congress kind of fell flat because O'Keefe didn't really bring the goods that he thought he was going to. Long story short, that's the Boston Consulting Group connection we talked about on air last week, or I think it was on the radio. In the meantime, last week, about 18 employees signed a letter to basically say that James O'Keefe was an abusive boss. And the board of directors met on, I think it was Wednesday of this week. And it was Matt Tierman, who's a name most people should know, orchestrated this whole ousting of James O'Keefe from Project Veritas. Basically, he was put on suspension. He was put on leave immediately. And today they had like an 8-hour meeting. James O'Keefe was not there. His lawyers were. Most of the consensus is people are furious at Project Veritas for this. If James O'Keefe leaves and goes somewhere else, that's where the money will go. Some of the big donors got involved and told this Project Veritas board that they need to go stuff it and bring James back. We'll see what happens. But Matthew Tierman apparently is pretty well organized. I always thought he was a good guy, but I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. There's a lot of opinion. At the end of the day, there's a 501c3 and a 501c4. The 501c3, O'Keefe has control over, and that's where most of the money is. But the 501c4 is where he's getting kicked off of. So there is a bit of ugliness going on at Project Veritas. There is a power play, and it's not good for anyone. If he has to leave.
What is a 501c4?
C4, if you don't mind. C4 is nonprofit, just like a C3, except for there's certain limits on what they can raise, and they're allowed to be more political. C3 cannot be.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a bit of silliness.
C7 is also another one's allowed to be political. Sorry, go ahead, more hamster.
Well, no, it's a bit of an issue. Let's say James O'Keefe gets a boot. Well, he's not going to stop his mission. He's going to go start up a new project, something. But unfortunately, all these ongoing you figure most of the staff will come with them.
Yeah.
Apparently, these 18 people that signed a letter, 10 of them, or at least more, had no personal experience. They were just going by basically what they'd heard, hearsay. And anyways, if it splits up, Project Veritas, as we know it, will die. Ongoing investigations will likely, well, who knows what dies? Do they have to turn in their cameras, everything like that? But I don't think James O'Keefe will have any problem whatsoever raising money to start over. But it's a major setback. So let's hope it doesn't come to that, but it's not looking good.
Yeah, and then the lefties, of course, are having fun with it and taking it way out of context, from what I understand.
I haven't seen too much of it, but I would imagine you're correct. I've been pretty busy working. I haven't been able to spend as much time in the social media corners and to really track it. So I'm just getting the headlines and a few comments. But yeah.
Well, the Daily Beast reports it as follows: the undercover video operation run by right-wing operative James O'Keefe is in turmoil, racked by unhappy donors and O'Keefe's outright cruel behavior toward his staff, according to an internal memo signed by a third of its employees. Working for O'Keefe at Project Veritas can mean being publicly humiliated by him in what amounts to public crucifixions and even being required to take a lie detector test, his unhappy employees wrote in the memo. I would describe Project Veritas' current environment with this, saying the beatings will continue until morale improves, one disgruntled staffer wrote in the memo. On Monday, Project Veritas staffers presented the nonprofit's board with the document covering his behavior, saying they were troubled and frustrated by O'Keefe's management style. Later that day, the board voted to reinstate 2 executives O'Keefe had fired a week earlier while O'Keefe went on paid leave. James will be taking a few weeks of well-deserved paid time off. Project Veritas Executive Director Daniel Strack wrote Monday in an internal Project Veritas group chat obtained by the Daily Beast. Even though O'Keefe is synonymous with the group he founded, his fate at the nonprofit remains unclear. New York Magazine first reported on the internal dissension and O'Keefe's leave. O'Keefe didn't respond to requests for comment. In a statement, Strack told the Daily Beast the board is constantly evaluating what the best path forward is for the organization. The internal dissension comes as Project Veritas faces a number of threats, including an FBI investigation and an employee's lawsuit alleging O'Keefe oversaw a raucous, sexually charged workplace complete with at least one drug overdose. Project Veritas has denied breaking any laws in the FBI investigation and is fighting the lawsuit. In December, the group laid off several staffers. I could read the rest of the story, but it's about 3 times as long as what I just read. Now, that said, it is hard to know what is true and what is not.
To me, it seems like you kind of wonder, like for instance, the disgruntled employee, is it really a disgruntled employee, or is it someone from wherever posing? Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, that's the whole thing. You get a huge, embarrassing sting on Pfizer, and 2 weeks later, you have a mutiny on your own team that you've been running for more than a decade. Yeah. The timing's got to be questionable.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and as someone who is behind this, I'm sure it's very frustrating. I mean, I've got people around me for the Mr. Constitution stuff. And, as it grows, of course, it's going to be harder and harder to, vet who comes in. So while I completely trust the people I have around me right now, at what point do you get to the size where you're not able to vet people as well as you want? You've got infiltrators because you're over the target, and therefore you're getting flack that includes that. I don't know what kind of person he is, and if he is guilty of what they're charging him of. When I say charging, I don't mean officially, but what that was charged in that article. We'll see. And I agree. It's probably internal infiltration. Probably 90% of it is BS. There might be some truth to some of it, perhaps. So we'll see.
Yeah. So, moving on to the laptop and the information with that, Brady, what do you have on that?
The laptop?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, it's about a 15-minute monologue.
Go ahead.
Not a whole lot of breaking news this week, but Hunter, there were congressional hearings today or this week, and they're basically talking about the suppression of the laptop. They were talking to the Twitter executives like Roth and Vijaya, and Baker, the attorney, and I forget who the fourth one was. Congress is going to move towards that laptop. What they're going to find, or the path they're going to take, I believe, is different than the DOJ. The DOJ is going after. Whoa, what was that noise? McGonigal, the FBI, ex-FBI guy that was arrested a few weeks ago. That's the direction the DOJ is going to go, and that's a lot more likely to really uncover this stuff. But the House can go through the laptop, find out what the FBI knew, when they knew it. That's going to look pretty ugly for the FBI. The whole point is oversight. This is an oversight committee. So are you going to get any actual? Are you going to get any scalps from the FBI from the oversight committee? Maybe, maybe not. But will it be covered in the press? It probably has to. But they can only go so far. They don't have very strong subpoena power. The DOJ's going down the track where it's going to uncover the link through Albania, the Chinese energy company CEFC, through Hunter Biden, that tracks back to Ukraine. How you have Joe Biden lobbying to give them weapons when he was vice president. His very last trip before he left office in 2006 or 2017 was to Ukraine, and just shortly before that, he was the year before that, he's putting Hunter on the board literally weeks after firing, getting a prosecutor in Ukraine fired. All this stuff is connected. It's an hour-long video. If I prepare it for, take me a week to prepare that, but all that dirt is available. It's public information. All the strings tie, and it absolutely implicates Obama. So that's the direction we'll want to go. Oversight can't get there, but they will do some damage with the questioning, because they've got some smoking guns. So they got some strings to pull on, and will we get authentic, a testimony from the FBI? No, we won't, unless we get some whistleblowers. So, and apparently they have some, but I don't know if they have any at that level.
Yeah, and the foreign entanglement is a huge issue, and I know Doug loves that word, entanglement, because it's
foreign
very
entanglement
true.
is something that George Washington and John Adams talked about. But to kind of capitalize on what Brady just said is, as he says, well, I don't know how much legs we'll get in the process, but it's exposing. And what I like to say is this: the point is, we want the more important court to see what's going on, the court of public opinion. And that can either create activity legally or activity in other ways. Well, obviously, there's a lot of hurdles that we need to get over regarding our different processes in this country. Once we start getting some of that under control and get that kind of in a more for all the lefties, I'll use their terminology to make them feel really good in a more fair and equitable manner, then we'll start seeing some change in our political system. But it begins with the court of public opinion getting riled up, being aware, being informed. And as I say all the time, education and being informed is the beginning of advocacy. And I believe that this could, if it gets out there enough, because I know the mainstream media is probably going to not expose or report on much of it, but if it gets out there enough and we get the court of public opinion riled up, it could be in the favor of liberty and moving back towards constitutional principles.
So here's a question, Doug, I have for you. I know you're about to say something, Brady. We'll get to that in a second. At what point is this treason, and at what point, I mean, it's one of those things where, which I know that we're all thinking the same thing, but I'm just asking the questions here. I mean, at what point are we going to start making examples of these people? I mean, they've gotten away with this stuff for so long. I mean, we've started wars for less than this. I mean, we have hung people for less than this. I mean, at bare minimum, I think they should lose their citizenship.
Hang on, Warhamster. So real quick, let me give him a quick answer, and then it's all yours. So the definition of treason, when you talk about it in Article 3 of the United States Constitution, Treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. The difficulty is, how do you define the enemy? When they're not wearing a uniform, they're not some foreign invader. They are not only at the gate, they're inside the gate, they're in the halls of government, and they've got the gate clicker, first of all. Second of all, the difficulty is that the processes that are involved with taking care of treasonous characters, they have control of the education system, the judicial system, the much of the political system, the bureaucracy, the media, the information, apparatus, and so on and so forth. In other words, it's like the old saying when it comes to Big Brother. How do you get control of Big Brother when nobody's watching the watchers, or they are the ones watching themselves? They are their own auditors. So it does create a challenge. Once again, that goes back to why the court of public opinion, starting things locally, getting it through grassroots. That's why that's all important, because that's the way we're going to have to do it, because they have their tendrils in so many different parts. But is it treasonous activity? My opinion, yeah. Should they be removed from office, the ones that are committing this? Absolutely, and never be able to run again. 14th Amendment, Section 3 says so, that they should be. But as long as they've got their grip on everything, it makes it very difficult. But then again, the tighter their grip, the tougher it is for them to keep control. And it reminds me of, and I know Brady's heard this before, but this is like one of my favorite lines, Star Wars, New Hope, the one that came out way in 1977. And Princess Leia says to Vader, the tighter the grip, the more systems will slip through your fingers. And that's kind of how I feel. The tighter they grip, the more slips through their fingers. All right, go ahead, Brady. It's all yours.
Well, you've got a you have a very different definition of real quick than I do. I'm kidding. If you talk long enough, eventually you're going to say what I was going to say, and you sort of did, but I phrased it a little bit differently. And
Okay.
To answer Andrew's question, I'll answer it with a question.
Okay.
What institution in this country has both the power and the desire to actually hold these people accountable?
I know where you're going, but Andrew, you
Say
have
that
any?
again.
Let Andrew try. Let's see if he's got any. Because you've been listening to me talk about the Constitution, so
Say it again.
What institution in this country has both the power and the inclination to hold these people responsible?
What institution?
Yeah, maybe is it Congress? Do they have the power to hold the FBI, the CIA, the presidency accountable? Does the executive branch have the desire and the ability?
Well, let's add something to that, and also if they are willing to garner it, the will to do so.
What that's what I said. I said the willingness, the desire.
Ooh, you put me on the spot.
There is an answer,
And it's a good one.
It's an unprecedented one, but sort of.
Well, something I've been teaching for years, but he puts it in a very nice way. So
Who puts it in this way? Oh, War Hamster.
we're watching Andrew squirm, audience. Are you enjoying this?
My brain
Andrew,
is.
Andrew, whose job is it to be the check on the federal government?
Oh, the people
The states.
And
or the states. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're going to have the states are going to have to convene something like an Article 5 convention and create some sort of tribunal system that's unprecedented. Legally, this is viable. That is the only way to hold the federal government accountable. That is the only way, because the federal government is never going to rein itself in, and these people have got control. When I say these people, it's this entire system of corruption, blackmail. They all have dirt on each other. They've all been doing this business for decades and decades. One goes
Sorry,
down.
I got confused on how you worded that. I was like, were you asking which brand? Like you legit confused me for a minute. Where I was like,
well, the states are it, but it goes a little bit beyond that. What I talk about when I talk about this is Federalist Paper number 49. Most people argue over whether it was Hamilton or Madison that wrote it. Based on the writing style, I'm convinced it's James Madison. And James Madison writes in that paper about conventions, but he doesn't just talk about a convention of states, or Article 5 convention, but a convention necessary for altering the Constitution or correcting breaches of it.
yeah.
In other words, for the states to come together in a convention and say, hey, the federal government's breaching the Constitution in this manner. This is how we need to correct it, be it nullification or some other manner. But nonetheless, the states, and now when they have a convention, and this is where people get confused. When a state holds a convention, who are the delegates? No office holder, according to convention rules throughout the history of this country, are to be a delegate. Then where do the delegates come from? The people. So the people need to put together delegates that gets together for the purpose of the state. The state legislature is, paying attention. They are sort of a part of this, but they don't have any say, because it's really delegates chosen by the people who say, okay, here's the breaches of the Constitution. Here's the problem. Now, who would the delegates be? It would be people that you would most trust in your community. Someone who might, I don't know the Constitution and things like that. People like perhaps Brady and I, you would hope. But nonetheless, Madison believed that, yes, the way to get the government under control, the federal government under control, especially when it's breaching the Constitution, is through the states and the people. And one of the ways to do that is through convention.
Yeah, let's see if I could redeem myself real quick. Let me say this, Brady, is for my stupid brain fart. But anyway,
brain fart. You're new at this game when it comes to what we do. It's okay.
No, these are tough questions.
I knew that answer, so legitimately, I got confused for a minute. But and the only real policing of the Constitution is the local sheriffs, is the local militia, not the FBI, not all those people.
Right.
So that's the only reason why it would make sense for the states to be able to carry this out, is because the only true policing authority in the United States that's legitimate would be the states and the sheriffs.
Execute the laws. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why getting a functional militia back, first of all. See, 24 states still have militias. Only 24, first of all. Second of all, none of them are, for the most part, functional in the manner that they should be. Guys, will you stop it? Jesus, we got dogs in here and they're arguing over a piece of rope. But anyway, tug of war going on over here, and finally one yelped. But anyway, but the problem is, with our militias being dysfunctional, sheriffs, for the most part, not being constitutional. I'll give you an example. My sheriff, who's a very conservative guy, when approached with a certain problem, says, well, gosh, I don't want the AG to fire me over it. Dude, AG can't fire you. The only people who can fire you is who hired you, the people.
Yeah, because the sheriff is voted in.
Right. The state apparatus has no business messing with your position. You were elected, you serve the people. And he's supposed to be the commander-in-chief of the local county militia. If you read the Virginia Ratification Convention, they talk about that. But we are so dysfunctional, we don't understand that what the militia is supposed to be, or how it's supposed to operate, or the fact that the sheriff is as important as he is. And the sheriffs don't even realize they're that important.
Yeah, and I think it's because they've been victimized, because militias have been demonized to be, what do you need a militia for, and all these guns and all this stuff.
It's not just that, but we've consolidated the power over the last 200 years towards the federal government.
True.
The states have lost their voice. So that's why, and Brady's exactly right, we got to get back to the fundamentals. The fundamentals are this: the states created the federal government. They are the parents over the federal government. They're the ones that need to, for lack of a better way of putting it, grab their pitchforks and their torches and bring the Frankenstein monster back where it belongs, rather than out there terrorizing the villagers.
Yeah.
Well, what you got to do, let me just wrap this up, is, really starts with, we always say act locally, but you've got to get state legislatures in many states and governors who are willing to do something called nullification. And we don't have that yet in any states. If you listen to Dr. Douglas Frank, he says there's not one good state legislature in the country, not one that he would trust.
Right. So, and we're talking about that too, is even if you get one to nullify, that's like throwing a rock on top of the anthill. It doesn't do anything. You need a large number of them at least a dozen or two states to join together arm in arm. This isn't right. We're going to nullify. We're arm in arm. This is what we're standing for. That is what we need. But what we've got is here and there a few politicians that go, okay, I get it. I've got more fingers than politicians I can name in different bodies of legislatures that are worth a darn. And that's not the way it should be.
Well, we were talking about that earlier today, that the Freedom Caucus seems to have about 20 plus people that actually get it. And so we need to, the Freedom Caucus is the people. I mean, they are certainly talking the talk, and some of them are walking the walk. And that's the best hope we've had since Ron Paul. So let's keep pushing that. But don't mean to undermine Donald Trump. He was a hope too, and said some of the right things.
What I liked about President Trump is he was a stick in their spokes.
Yeah.
So see what the Freedom Caucus does is they're trying to rechain the system and rechain the bicycle, so to speak. What he did is stick a stick in the spoke so it all crashed, so we could at least try to get to the bicycle.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of people do get it. You know, like there's a lot of people in the Second Amendment community that understand, like, for instance, with the thing with the sheriffs, they understand what the sheriff's responsibilities are more than the sheriffs, like you said. Like, for instance, the sheriffs can tell, if I'm correct, they could tell the ATF to get out of their state. They could tell the FBI to get out of their state. They could tell almost basically any federal entity
in a county without the sheriff's permission, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
that's right.
And I think that's huge. And if the sheriffs knew that, and that they're good constitutional sheriffs, and that they're not just, in name only, that it'd be amazing the things that we could accomplish. And I think that's maybe one way to kind of accelerate a lot of this, is to get the sheriffs to go, well, you know what, I am the man. I can do this, because also sheriffs are, they want to be the top dog, and what better way to be a top dog than tell the government to go tuck their tail, so. But
well, it's one of the people that works on that is a gentleman by the name of Sheriff Mack. Sheriff Mack has the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, CSPOA, and you can look it up. And I've known him for years. He and I have done a couple of events together. His California State Director is actually one of my speakers at a September annual dinner that I host every year. And that's kind of one of the subjects that we are talking about. And I talk about the militias and the importance of the sheriff and all of that, and how it's supposed to all work together. And it's funny because there's a gentleman, and Brady, you know him, Bryant. And Bryant, in my Marietta class, loves to say, make the militia great again. And when we talk about the militia, we're not talking about a bunch of good old boys in Michigan flying a bunch of flags that a lot of people get offended by. We're talking about our state defense force, the citizen soldier, the citizen whatever troop that is there to defend their communities, not just against invasion by foreign whatever, but also against tyranny. And that is the potential of federal tyranny, which gets us all the way back to things like the Second Amendment. That's the purpose of this. We don't have the militias hardly anymore. There's only 24 out of 50 states that have one. And then once again, as I said earlier, they're dysfunctional. And if you go to Article 1, Section 8, in Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution, some of you may have read it, and it says that Congress shall have the power to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union. There's not supposed to be agencies domestically executing executive law, federal law inside the country. If a federal law needs to be executed and it's a domestic one, which there's not supposed to be very many of them as it is, that's supposed to be the militia through the sheriff executing those laws. All these agencies, especially certain agencies, are suddenly getting armed with 87,000 or whatever. You know who I'm talking about. There's nothing constitutional about that. The federal government's not supposed to have its own policing arm in that manner. Why? Because the militia is who? the citizen soldier, the local people. And if them through their sheriff and the sheriff is saying, whoa, wait, this is unconstitutional, and the militia's like, yeah, it is. We're not carrying out that stuff against our neighbors, friends, and family, then it doesn't happen. It's another way of, it's basically a local community way of nullification.
Yeah. What do you have, Brady?
I got nothing to add. Doug summed it up pretty well. We can move on to the next topic. I think we killed that one pretty nicely.
Yeah, well, when we get into something like that, I get pretty passionate. Of course, it's funny. I do that with all the Constitution, but hey.
All right. Well, here's a question that we didn't talk about this much, but the Chinese spy balloons. I mean, could we consider that an act of war? I mean, I would say so.
Say it again. The
balloon? Chinese spy balloons. Could we consider?
Well, first of all, let me start with this, if you don't mind, Brady. People ask me, what do you think about all these balloons showing up? I said, what'd you expect when we're surrounded by a bunch of clowns? So, now that said, now that I've got my joke in, I do not deny that there are vehicles, balloons, or other vehicles that are flying around and that have been noticed and that are being dealt with. I'm just not so sure they are what they're saying they are, or I'm not so sure that there isn't some type of collusion between the two governments if they are what they are said to be.
Well, if there was collusion, what would be the point of it?
One world government?
Better yet, another emergency. See, the thing is, tyranny doesn't work if there's no emergencies.
Well,
there's
then
constantly be emergencies. And we just heard in the news this morning, or at least I did, we're listening to the radio when I was going into Fallbrook to give a speech on Kogo down in San Diego, and they said that the emergency use authorization for the in the arm is being canceled by the Biden administration, and by May, the COVID restrictions and emergencies are going to be done. Well,
April 11th.
So they just lost one of their emergencies. Now they've got their climate emergency, which is looming, but they got to have some type of emergency in the meantime. We already got a gas emergency. We got to, get rid of those stoves, and that's an emergency. So they need to come up with the many emergencies they can, and they need to distract you. The balloon does two things. Number one, it puts in place a new emergency, and number two, it's a new distraction. Hey, look over here, while they do something over here, smoke and mirrors, or petitions, whatever you want to call it.
Let me take one exception to that, because the fact that they saw the balloon in Montana was purely happenstance. There was a random person who happened to be looking at the right place.
Oh, bull! They knew it before it got across Alaska.
Well, the government knew, but for us, the people to know, that got out accidentally. So then they were scrambling for a cover story. So I think the government got caught.
That's why I think there was collusion.
Well, also, we won't even need the Chinese to send out a balloon. I mean, we could just ask NASA to send out.
See, you're missing the point. It's got to be Chinese, because somebody might eventually be able to figure it out. So it's got to be.
Yeah, except for that.
They can say, "See, it's the enemy."
Except for the balloon had American writing on it, and of course, could have just been stolen parts.
Didn't it say Trump won? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, but I think Holly said it in class, was the balloon shot down over in Alaska really a UFO? We don't know if it was a balloon. We don't know what it is. It was a significantly smaller object. We do know that. That's about the only thing they've confirmed. But there was another thing shot down today when it barely got into Alaska airspace. I have no idea if they're trying to act tough and try to save the Biden administration's reputation about being weak on this stuff. We don't know diddly squat. I think one of the more plausible narratives that's come out of this is that China and the United States have been flying balloons and satellites spying on us for years, and they just rarely get caught because they fly so high.
Well, that's the weird thing about it is typically your spy planes, your spy balloons, all this stuff is typically going to be above any kind of air traffic. 40,000 feet. I mean, if I remember right, commercial planes can fly that.
This is at 60,000 feet most of the time, this balloon, and it got as high as 80.
Well, you still have certain air traffic, like well, I guess not 60, but
I think 40 is about the limit.
I was told it was 40 though. I was told it was 40,000 feet.
Yeah, we had a big debate about that the other day, so I double checked a bunch of sources, and I think the consensus is somewhere around 60, 65,000. was what the balloon was mostly flying at.
Which
Now,
is
the inter-
going to be above all commercial and also above most military travel. Now, spy planes would be in, that's like the bottom end of the spy plane territory, I would
Well,
say.
yeah, to Doug's point, and the to Doug's point, which I just forgot, the military is not going to tell us the truth on this stuff. They've got all this kind of stuff. You know, we've been flying spy planes over Russia and China for years. We have satellites. Is a balloon more effective? Yeah, because you can get higher resolution, and you don't have to go all the way up in space. You don't have to safeguard it for everything like that. We're not going to get the truth of this one anytime soon. But to Doug's point about the emergencies, that's the one. It was about 3 weeks ago when the Biden administration announced it was going to be April 11th or May 11th. I think it was April 11th. The COVID emergency is going to end. What's interesting?
Yeah, I read it was May, but Washington Post. But go ahead.
I just remember it was the 11th. It was either 4/11 or 5/11. And it's been a few weeks, so my memory's shot on that one. The point being, how do you know? Why pick an arbitrary day? And why not just end it?
Obviously, they negotiated with the virus.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. And so you got to wonder, because these guys keep the people scared is their only strategy. You keep people scared, then you're able to, Hegelian dialectic, scare people, move in, take more government, seize more power. That's their only game plan at this point in time. That's the only play they have. That's been Biden's entire administration. Is, remember the winter of death that we were going to suffer through. No, apologize for that. I got a fun little graph I'll pull up here in a second. Speaking of that, but
well, I mean, it's the thing is that I get spy balloons and all this stuff is scary, but do you know how often all these countries fly satellites and planes over us and we don't even know it?
Satellites would be more effective. So that's
True.
The reason why I doubt what it really is and why I believe it was on purpose to make sure the people saw and that it became an emergency because, if it was what they're saying it was for, the balloon would not be the best way to do it. Now, personally, I was half expecting once they figured out it was a balloon or whatever, some voice to suddenly go, they float down here. Everything floats. But, that's just me. Pennywise the clown, never mind. But anyway, so that's that whole scenario right there. It just makes no sense. It's not like we're not going to notice a balloon. They're going to spy on us with a balloon, a slow moving balloon that somebody's going to see eventually. Really?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you this:
satellites in the air.
Well, I'll tell you this: it's not out of China's realm, and I read this from a book that was bear with me. It was a former Chinese. I forgot what it was for the Obama administration. I want to say. He dealt with a lot of stuff with China. But anyway, I guess in his book, he detailed a lot how the Chinese will go back to the Warring States period, and that's where they get a lot of their learnings from, and a lot of their lessons learned. And the big thing that they've learned is a lot of times they'll use asymmetrical warfare, where we're using this, but then they use something that we can't account for, we can't just shut off, and then therefore they can, but. I mean, a balloon is a little kind of primitive, but
I got another topic. I got to share something with. Who watched the Biden State of the Union address?
If I want to watch something of some random guy babbling like an idiot, I would just watch myself talk in a mirror. So,
bear with me. I didn't watch it. I read some of the comments later. I typically on stuff like that, if I don't want to watch it, I'll check out the transcript later, but I'm not even sure I can stand to read the transcript. But from what I understand, he was a little extra coherent, which means it was probably the Joe Biden with the ear that attaches the lobe to the side of the face instead of the one that hangs. Yes, that's right. I think there might be a doppelganger, but that's besides the point.
Well, no, the coherent one is the one with the detached.
Is that the one? Okay, and the one that's attached. Okay, yeah, I knew it was one or the other. But anyway, but I did hear he was relatively decent at the delivery, but what was said, of course, was not only mostly untrue, but it even got the Republicans to jump out of their seats calling him a liar. I did not see it. I heard about this. That said, it amazes me that taking credit for tragedy and calling it not tragedy, and then when he can't get out of the tragedy, then it's all everybody else's fault. That's the Democrat Party's MO. That's what they do.
Well, I'm sure you guys are aware of this, but obviously he's been claiming to be adding 11 million jobs and all that, and I'm about ready to call BS on that.
11 million jobs, like on Sim City or whatever that video game was.
Are you able to see my screen?
No, not yet.
That should be sharing.
Okay. Oh, you meant other than you? Oh.
No, I should be sharing a website.
As you're figuring that out, I'm not probably going to steal your thunder, but let's see. We've got number one, a large percentage of them are federal jobs. And number two, well, gosh, we just went through COVID where a lot of people lost their job. Now they're getting rehired, right? Just saying.
Well, if I can pull up, I should be able to pull up this graph, but it doesn't feel like it wants to.
It's not playing nice.
Well, I'll get there in a second. It's called the employment participation rate. And, I need to show the picture's worth a million words on this one. So let me give this one more try. But in a nutshell, we basically, the way they measure unemployment is based, they've been fudging with it for a while. So you should be able to.
Based on unemployment, people who are receiving unemployment, but then if someone no longer receives it, they never found a job, they don't count them anymore. That's one of the ways that
they've been fudging it. You should be able to see this now.
I see a screen where it's us. Okay. So you haven't gotten the right screen up yet.
Well, then that's not going to happen. Shoot, hang on.
No, you got a screen show, but you're showing the screen of us.
Well, it shouldn't
be YouTube basically, or the StreamYard. I mean,
yeah, we're gonna have to work on that.
It's almost like Facebook. That's weird.
We're gonna have to work on that. Anyways, long story short, the employment participation rate from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which you'll see is a long, steady, gradual decline. Fewer and fewer people part of the workforce, starting around the Obama years, and all of a sudden it started to flatten and go back up with Trump up to about 2019, and then COVID hits and it goes straight down, and then it's gone up, going right back up. Then Biden takes office, and it's sort of been flat and just drifting upward, barely at all for the 2 years of Biden. He hasn't had diddly squat for jobs. They've been fudging the numbers. The 500,000 they gained last month was due to a $2.5 million person seasonal adjustment. They are lying through their teeth. The Bureau of Labor Statistics is in on it. It's the biggest seasonal adjustment in history. And they did it right before the State of the Union, so Biden could tell that lie, and it is ridiculous.
Yeah, Glenn Stoll in the chat room, which is up the hill from me and runs a tea party, and must have saw my email go out. So good to see you, Glenn. And he says something also very important. Also, increased job numbers often happens when people are struggling so much they got to get a second job to pay for the inflation cost. That's a good observation. I think that may also play into this.
Yeah, well, the bottom line is, there are a lot of people who just left the workforce and never came back, and they're not coming back.
They're not counted.
No, they're not. They've been redefined out of existence. So you got fewer. Yeah, but bottom line is, you want to talk about employment, you take how many people live in the country and how many are working. That's the proper ratio of employment, and ours is way down. It can be supported. It's down about 63%. It can be supported in the 50s, and it was up until the 1970s, because you usually only had men were mostly working and women were not. Then this women's lib thing started, and we had to have both people in a household working, and now you have to just to be able to keep a roof over your head in many cases. But it's really changed in the last 50 years, labor statistics, and you really can't do decade-on-decade comparisons because the demographics have changed so drastically.
Well, that's also part of the eugenics kind of aspect, because a lot of eugenicists are getting on that, are starting to get on their trumpets again. Like, well, if we had less people, because someone said, I forgot who it was, but it only takes one generation to not have any kids for the population to drastically drop. And
well, I guess once you get below like 1.25, I think it is, or no, it's less than that, less than 1.2 fertilization rate, then you're in trouble. But I want to make a real quick comment. Mayrose in the chat. I just filled up yesterday at 309. You're obviously not where I live, because now, granted, not all the gas places were this high, but I was on my way back from Capistrano, and it was kind of out of the way, and the gas station was sitting by itself along the 76. $5.29 I paid. per gallon. So we're still over 5 in some places here in Southern California. Most of it's above 4. I think I saw an Arco at one point that was $3.99, but I haven't seen anything else below 4 something out here. But some of it's still above 5. But anyway, yeah. All right, Bill, rub it in. Bill says $2.99 here. Yeah, he actually sends me text. Sends a bunch of us text pictures of what he pays in gas because he likes to watch us weep. But anyway,
here in Tennessee,
this is a good topic. And here's the thing, though, and let's get a little constitutional here. Brady, question for you.
What you got?
Does the federal government have any authority regarding the market, the free market, jobs, companies, or anything like that?
That's not their damn business.
Interesting. And one other question, because Biden says he's created all these jobs. Does the federal government create anything?
Pain, misery, suffering.
My point exactly. I knew Brady'd be on target here.
Oh, gee, thanks.
Now, at the end of the day, and this is the major grief when you hear these. I was giving one of our Republican representatives grief on Twitter earlier today. He's complaining about the Democrats and all the debt that they've racked up. But I go, it's completely disingenuous. You're being dishonest because Republicans are equally as responsible. And if you're going to sit there and play tribalist games, you're basically showing that you have no idea what the real problem is, or you're aware of it and are unwilling to address it. The problem isn't Republicans or Democrats racking up debt. The problem is the government racking up debt and nobody doing a damn thing about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did it in 140 characters, a little bit more artfully than I did just now. But these people need to be quit letting these people grandstand on right versus left. The whole issue is liberty versus tyranny. The federal government does 1,000 things that they have no business doing whatsoever.
I know. I'll help that spending problem.
Yeah, what
the
you got?
17th.
That's a good start.
Or the 16th. Sorry, 16th.
Well, they go hand in hand. You got the 16th, 17th, and the Federal Reserve Act all go hand in hand. They had to enact all three to work together. So we got to take them all down together.
Mm-hmm.
That's a major priority if we ever get to an Article 5 convention.
One more response to something in the chat room. I'm enjoying May Rose's participation, and I'm going to use the language being used because I have to. May Rose, yes. My wife and I also decided to remain pure blood. We're the only ones in her side of the family that did so. And interesting, we're the only ones that never got a cough. Just saying. All right.
Got predictions of a new virus coming from a lot of different directions. Speaking of which, Merck, one of the other giant pharma companies, apparently their pill that was supposed to prevent COVID apparently is doing just the opposite, and they're about ready to have to recall $1 billion a year drug.
It's funny. Your Nifty 50 list. Yeah. Merck, Pfizer, and Johnson & Johnson are all on that list. So they weren't totally wrong in their list.
No, they've missed a lot of them.
Yeah, they did miss a lot of them.
Amazing how resilient the drug companies have been. Imagine if you're a Nifty 50 company for 6 or 7 decades, how much power you can wield over DC with lobbyists. There was a great graph, and I've been trying to find it for years, but it came out around 2007 or 8, and they talked about corporations. They measured what's your best return on investment. Is it buying back your own shares? Is it paying dividends? Is it investing in more plants and what have you, or expansion? But no, by an order of about 5 times more return for your buck is lobbying. Lobbying is the best money you can spend as a corporation. You get more benefits back per dollar spent than any other form of investment from a corporation. And I need to find that graph. If anybody ever has it, please send it to me if you see it, because it was a brilliant graphic. And I lost it when an old laptop died.
Blob City, grew up eating mud and dirt and walked around barefoot. George Carlin talks about swimming in the Hudson. We swim in raw sewage. I can fight off anything. Yeah, I grew up that way too. Matter of fact, there was a pond at the end of the street that I lived in North Long Beach. It was so scuzzy and scummy. There were tadpoles and something growing on the surface. We used to jump into that thing. So yeah, I could probably fight off anything. But anyway, I agree. All right, very good, Andrew. Have we exhausted this topic? And if so, what's next?
All right.
Now, granted, we are at the 1 hour mark.
Yes, let's get wrapping up. So let's come up with one more topic and then we'll wrap up. Let's see here. Let me pick from my topic list. Let me see what I got.
Nice haircut,
I guess
by the way.
let's say what?
Nice haircut, man. You got a real slim and trim there, man.
Thank you. I actually had it done this time. Normally I cut my own hair, and obviously it could show, but it's free, so I cannot argue with it. Although I think I was told that my free haircuts I did myself, I should get a refund. So that one hurt. Anyway, let's wrap it up with the off subject real quick, but I know that Brady can give us some quick stuff. Anything with the CIA lately?
In my research, or anything going on with the CIA lately? No,
you pick.
You know, the stuff I'm reading right now, it's been kind of fun. You know, I've always talked about the origins of the CIA coming from Wall Street law firms. You know, same way the British Empire did that. They'd always have their send in people to work behind the scenes and find people in foreign ports that were amenable to doing business with outside sources for their own personal gain. You start reading more and more about how these law firms blended themselves into the CIA on day one, and things start making more and more sense. The book I'm finishing up, the Whitney Webb book, which is One Nation Under Blackmail, and some of the names coming out of that you know, basically what you see is, you know, which I've talked about, is CIA, FBI, business titans, British royalty, lords, ladies, mafia, all connected, and they're all in all these different hubs, whether it be Cleveland, New York, DC, London, what have you. They have someone would set up some kind of a club, you know, whether, you know, just for these people that are connected, and they were all sex clubs. And you know, they had their consorts, and some of these consorts talked in the 50s and 60s. And you've got some JFK stories. There aren't a whole lot of people that were in positions of power that were not part of all this. And when Bobby Kennedy was going after Hoover, that's what really started to get interesting. So that's what I've been reading about lately. I'll probably be ready to do a presentation on this pretty soon. In fact, I may do this next Thursday for class, the origins of the CIA and all that.
I have a question for you, Brady, real quick before we start wrapping up. Is there a connection with R.C. Christian and the something of Rome?
Club of Rome?
I think so.
Yeah. Club of Rome is definitely one of the eugenics clubs and stuff like that. But wasn't R.C. Christian a made-up name?
It was for an actual gentleman who ended up being a surgeon. His real name is it's close to Christian, but it's not quite Christian. But I wonder if there's a CIA connection with that as well.
Well, I guess the point I'm making is it's all connected. It's like George Carlin says, one big club, you're not in it, but how they actually function behind the scenes and what they, you know, you can never go after one of them because they all have dirt on each other. And the
CIA is involved in a lot more sometimes, even later on. People who used to be in the CIA are still connected to all of this. And a great example is with Hamilton 68, you know, the Russian bot, you know, deal. One of the people that was behind Hamilton 68 was Mike Morrell, who career intelligence analyst, career CIA guy, and acting director of the CIA in 2011. And he was involved with, well, you know, can we say Project Mockingbird? But anyway, you know, so CIA in the news lately, probably a lot more than we realize, because a lot of the stuff that's going on, I'm sure that the CIA has their tendrils in. And this gets back to this discussion that we have, that I've had quite a bit, and people talk about, well, the government. Well, I don't like generalizing that like that. I don't believe everyone in the government is a problem, although I would say the percentage is at its highest ever right now, perhaps. But there are segments of the government that's problematic. I'm sure there are a small handful of decent people in the intelligence community, but the CIA generally probably is overrun with the enemy. Why? If you were the enemy, what would you infiltrate? What would you control? What would you spend your time trying to get into? The CIA, the FBI, the presidency eventually, all of that is, you know, a part of their target. And so, of course, there are segments of our government, and very important segments like CIA, you know, I mean, you know, that's what they're going to do. That's what they're going to target.
Yeah, and they're working hand in hand with the military-industrial complex. They always want their forever wars. I mean, that's the war profiteers and stuff like that. The question you got to ask is who's actually giving them their marching orders, and the answers are these think tanks, these NGOs, these family foundations. The people, the puppet masters, are, you know, small at that level, a small group of very connected people that sit at the top, you know, sit at the head of the table. Everything about this, you know, and we talked about the Masonic and stuff like that. But if you look at their power structure, it's all a pyramid. They talk about circles of power, but it's not. It's a pyramid with the very people at the top, and it spreads on that. They just want to keep knocking out the big fat bases because that's us. Doug, I had a fun one.
Real quick, PragerU also did a little video on it that not too long ago, where they talk about how at the local level that you got these little kings and they all run the bureaucracy. You got all these little tyrants that run that, and then they answer to the next up and so on and so forth. And so yeah, your pyramid is exactly right.
Yeah, that's the compartmentalization. So
Looks
remember,
like City listens to you.
Yeah, all wars are banker wars. Yeah.
Yeah. You remember a number of months back, I kind of shocked you, Doug, when I told you that Buckley was a member of Skull and Bones.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's also CIA. Yeah, that was he's the original, one of the original Project Mockingbird guys. Your guy. So they've been playing this for quite some time.
Well, so the question is was William F. Buckley still connected to that when he got into what we consider to be the conservative movement, or did he have a change of heart?
No, I think this was the fake conservative movement that came out of these 50 50 elite families from the Northeast, the Yankees. These are the ones who started. This is the Prescott Bushes. These are the DuPonts. These are the Harriman, Brown Brothers Harriman. This is Sullivan and Cromwell. These are the old blue blood names from New York and Boston. They call themselves Protestants and religious, but they were definitely anti-communist, without a doubt, because they hated international communism at the time. So if you want to call that conservative, they absolutely were. But being anti-communist doesn't make you conservative. And they had, what were they trying to conserve?
I mean, the fascists were anti-communists.
Well, that's what these guys were. They're the American fascists. So I called my video.
Doug, I was going to say that.
Still in your thunder, huh?
Well, that's why these are the same people that financed the Nazis. You know, I did a full video on that. It's the monetary connections. Why did the Germans never really, you know, invade the Netherlands? Because that's where the money was coming through. It was.
Well, that's always been where the money was coming from. All the way back to, you know, why am I forgetting the name of that town? Antwerp. Antwerp was like back during the early Holy Roman Empire. That was like the hub. I mean, it was down in the Mediterranean, and you can even say Vienna, or not Vienna. I'm sorry, Venice, but and all of that. But eventually, the hub wound up being up there in Holland. And Antwerp was the only city bigger than Antwerp at the time was Paris.
Well, that's why
I have to correct y'all though. It was Switzerland, not the Netherlands, because the Nazis invaded the Netherlands. It was Switzerland that they never invaded. No one ever invaded Switzerland. Not World War I, not World War II. No one ever has. They've always been neutral.
Yeah, that's a different set of money. The money that was coming from these American fascists was being routed through Amsterdam, and then Doug's right about Antwerp. This is we actually set up a bank that Prescott Bush set it up, and I think Harriman took it over, but there's another name I'm forgetting, and it's a big one who's involved in all that. What's interesting is we look at today, which of the royal families, you know, you talk about the wealthiest family dynasties in the world. Mm-hmm. Well, of course, you got the Windsors in England, but the Dutch royalty is still very much intact and very wealthy. Royal Dutch Shell is one of the biggest oil companies in the world. Just like British Petroleum was the big moneymaker for the British royals. And just like the Rockefellers, who became America's royalty, although we're not allowed to crown them, they kind of act as such here in America. And a lot of it is old oil money, which is obviously transformed in all three cases into pharmaceutical money. That's why these people are untouchable. You know, the Rockefellers basically financed the entire pharmaceutical industry for quite some time. You know, they're the ones who financed our medical schools dating back to the 1910s. They were behind the eugenics movement. I'm sorry, the transhumanist movement of the 1920s and 30s. Well, one of the big eugenist programs, which became the Technocratic Party. This is all connected. You know, it's the same darn thing. And it's really all about a battle for resources. These people look at themselves in the mirror and say, I'm rich because I'm superior genetically, and all these other people below me are useless eaters, and they're trying to take up my resources. Back in the medieval days, 99% of the land and resources were owned by the nobles. That changed, and they want it back. And that's really what eugenics is all about.
All right. Now, as we wrap up, because we're about 10 minutes past what we normally stop at, I want to remind everybody, and thank you for Tracy for putting that in there. Help the channel out and hit the thumbs up, folks. Not just hit the thumbs up, but also subscribe. Hit that subscribe, and if you want to know shows are coming up, hit that bell for notification too. And also visit all of our other stuff that we do, because Andrew has other shows he does in addition to this.
Yes, let me talk about that real quick, Doug. Thank you
go
for
ahead.
that. The Biblical Record. I have a couple.
Now, is it on this channel, or do you have a separate channel for that?
It's on this channel.
Okay.
This is going to be like my network.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a separate channel. It's about biblical things. Sometimes I'll have guests on, and we'll talk about either some thoughts that they have on certain things on Scripture and other stuff like that. And it could get a little debating, depending on the subject. Like, well, because obviously I go strictly off the Bible, right? So I test it to the Word, and if it doesn't jive, hey, it is what it is, But that's basically one of the missions that I'm adding on, just because that is really important to me. Because people are less and less understanding the Constitution and knowing our freedoms, but it's even less of understanding who gave us these freedoms, and and that's God. That's Jesus. So
okay, Brady Blob City is impressed. Says dude knows his stuff. I think he's referring to you. Might be referring to all of us, but I think he was referring to you. So tell Blob City how else they can find you at other places.
Let's see. I live at you can find me on Rumble under War Hamster or War_Hamster. I'm on Twitter more often these days at War_Hamster1776. And there's an @ in front of that, of course. And I have got some new stuff come down the pipeline in the next month. I will definitely be releasing a video of my presentation that I'm giving next Thursday, which will probably be CIA oriented. And I will have that up on my channels. So you definitely want to check that one out. It'll probably be up by Friday. I should be done with the editing. And that should be a really good presentation. I've been working on it for a while.
All right. And finally, I'm Mr. Constitution, Douglas V. Gibbs, DouglasVGibbs.com, PoliticalPistachio.com. DouglasVGibbs.com is getting ready to do some really neat stuff. And I was talking to a person who's helping me do all that neat stuff today, because I was wondering, should we do a little launch now and then do the big stuff later? He says, no, let's wait till we have it all together and then we'll bring it out. So I've got some big things in the future for DouglasVGibbs.com. Make it a site that you can go to for full learning. But you can still learn MrConstitution.com. That's MR-Constitution.com on Tuesdays at 3 live, or we'll watch the videos anytime. Like with a lot of these YouTube channels, when you go to the page, you might only see a couple videos. Hit the live link, and that'll take you to all the videos of me going through the Constitution and things like that. Also, YouTube.com/DouglasVGibbs. And I have another YouTube channel, the Constitution Study page, which you can click off of that page. Or you can go to Rumble, BitChute, or Brighteon. Once again, Douglas V. Gibbs. That's my full name is typically the keyword for accessing my materials. I also have 9 books I've written, the latest being called Repeal Democracy, and a couple of radio shows on AM radio. One of them you can get on all of the podcast platforms. Just type into your favorite podcast platform, Mr. Constitution Hour by Douglas V. Gibbs, and you'll get it from iHeart, Odyssey, Audible, Spotify, Apple, you name it, it's probably there. And then, of course, there's always this. United we stand, combined we kick butt. God bless America, my friends. God bless you. I don't know about you guys, but I will see you guys next week. I'm actually going to be out of town. There's no classes next week. I will be out of town from Saturday night till Thursday, but I'll be home just in time to rejoin this show next Friday.
All right, everyone. Thank you, and have a good night.
Cheers, everyone.